Well, hey everyone, before I dive into this, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and maybe even share this story. It helps more than you know, and trust me, you'll want to stick around to see where this all goes. So here's the deal. My name's Mark, 36M, and until a few months ago, I thought my marriage was rock solid. My wife, Claire, 34F, and I have been together for 11 years, married for 8. We were the boring couple our friends teased. The ones who meal prepped on Sundays, had a fixed Netflix rotation, and kept a joint calendar on the fridge. Stability was our thing. Or at least, that's what I believed. It's almost laughable looking back now, the little signs that piled up without me connecting the dots. 6 months ago, Claire started working out more. At first, I was supportive. Who wouldn't be happy their partner is trying to be healthier? But soon, the gym trips turned into 2-hour marathons, often late at night. When I offered to join her, she got defensive. "You'll slow me down, Mark. Just let me do my thing." Then came the phone. Claire has never been super private with her phone, but suddenly she treated it like a newborn baby. Always face down, always on silent. I'd walk into the room, and she'd flip it so fast you'd think it was on fire. Once, I caught her smirking at a text, and when I asked, she said it was just a meme from her coworker. But when I asked to see it, she blew up, accusing me of being controlling, of not trusting her. I told myself I was overthinking. That paranoia ruins relationships, not texts or gym sessions. But deep down, a knot had started forming in my gut. And knots don't just vanish, they grow tighter. The breaking point came one Tuesday night. She said she had to stay late for inventory checks at her job. Weird, because she works in HR, not retail. I shrugged it off, until around 11 p.m. when I realized her location sharing on Google Maps had been turned off. She'd never done that before. My stomach dropped. Something was off, and I couldn't keep pretending anymore. That night, I barely slept. My mind replayed every odd excuse, every time she snapped at me for asking simple questions, every weird smirk at her phone. The woman I thought I knew inside out was suddenly a stranger. And the worst part? I had no idea just how far this rabbit hole was about to go. The morning after Claire's mysterious inventory check, I woke up to an empty bed. She was in the shower, her phone buzzing faintly on the nightstand. Normally, I don't snoop. I've always believed trust is the backbone of a marriage. But after last night, the late hours, the turned-off location, I felt like that backbone had snapped in half. The screen lit up with a preview. "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you." My heart slammed against my ribs. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it's a spam message. Maybe it's some joke from a friend. But the sender's name wasn't saved. Just a number with no contact photo. Claire had always been meticulous about saving numbers. That alone was weird. I picked up the phone, hands shaking, and scrolled through the notifications. There were at least 5 unread texts, all from the same number. One of them said, "Wish you could have stayed longer. Next time, no excuses." My stomach flipped. I felt heat rising in my face, like I'd been caught in some cruel joke. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, to scream, but instead I set it down exactly where I found it. I didn't want her to know I'd seen anything. Not yet. A few minutes later, she walked out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, humming like nothing was wrong. She kissed me on the cheek, casual as ever, and said, "I'm so tired. That meeting went forever last night. You wouldn't believe how much paperwork I had to process." I just stared at her. The audacity. The way she lied straight to my face, eyes wide open, not even a flicker of guilt. It made my blood boil. But here's the thing. I didn't confront her. Not then. Instead, I started noticing everything. Her perfume lingering even when she claimed she hadn't gone out. The way she dressed for work, like she was auditioning for a nightclub. The sudden new lingerie I found stuffed in the back of the drawer, tags ripped off, but never once worn for me. I began keeping notes. Dates, times, excuses. I felt like a detective in my own marriage, cataloging my wife's lies one by one. And the deeper I went, the more obvious it became. Claire wasn't just hiding something small. She was building an entirely separate life right under my nose. But I still didn't have undeniable proof. And I knew if I confronted her too early, she'd twist it back on me. Make me the paranoid husband, the controlling man. Claire was sharp with her words, always had a way of flipping arguments. I needed something concrete. So I waited. I played the part of the loving husband while inside. Every interaction felt like poison. Each, "I love you," she tossed my way felt faker than the last. But I smiled, nodded, and kept digging, because some part of me needed to see just how deep her betrayal went. And oh, I was about to find out. For weeks, I played the role, smiling, cooking dinner, making small talk. Meanwhile, every nerve in my body was screaming at me. I kept thinking, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe those texts were some bizarre misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew. I just didn't have the smoking gun. That gun arrived on a Thursday night. Claire said she was heading to the gym again, around 8:30 p.m. normally. I'd just let her go, but something inside me snapped. I couldn't sit on the couch pretending anymore. I grabbed my jacket, got in the car, and tailed her. My hands were sweating so bad I could barely grip the wheel. She didn't go to the gym. Instead, she drove across town to a small boutique hotel, the kind with neon lights flickering out front, the kind people don't book for business trips. I parked across the street, heart pounding so loud I was sure it would give me away. I watched as she pulled into the lot, smoothed her hair in the mirror, and stepped out in heels I'd never seen before. A few minutes later, a man walked out of the lobby. Tall, clean cut, probably mid-30s. He kissed her right there, in plain view, like she belonged to him. Not a hug, not a peck. A deep, hungry kiss, the kind I hadn't gotten from her in years. My stomach dropped. It was like the world tilted sideways. Everything went quiet except for the ringing in my ears. That was it. Proof. No more excuses, no more lies. I wanted to storm across the street, to drag her back to the car and demand answers. But something told me not to, not yet. If I confronted her there, she'd just deny it, gaslight me, spin some ridiculous story. I needed more than just what my eyes saw. So I stayed. I watched them walk inside together, arms linked like newlyweds. Minutes turned into an hour. My chest ached, my throat was dry, but I forced myself to wait. Eventually, around midnight, they emerged again, laughing, smiling. She had her head on his shoulder like a lovesick teenager. I took photos. My hands were shaking so badly the first few came out blurry, but I got enough. Date, time, place, her, him. Undeniable. When she finally got home, sneaking in around 1 a.m., tiptoeing like I was asleep, I almost confronted her right then. But instead, I lay in bed, eyes shut, pretending to breathe deeply while her perfume and the stench of betrayal filled the room. She whispered good night before slipping under the covers. I wanted to scream, to tell her I knew everything, but I bit my tongue so hard it almost bled, because I wasn't ready for the explosion yet. I needed to plan my next move, and I had no idea just how ugly things were about to get. The next morning, I couldn't look at Claire the same way. She made pancakes, humming along to some pop song, acting like the perfect wife. Meanwhile, all I saw were those photos burned into my mind. Her lips on another man's, her head on his shoulder. I decided to test the waters. Over breakfast, I casually asked, "So, how was the gym last night?" She didn't even blink. "Good. Exhausting, though." I pushed myself hard. "My legs are killing me." She laughed, rubbing her thigh for effect. It was like watching a professional liar on stage. She didn't just fib, she performed. I stared at her, wondering how many times I'd swallowed stories like this over the years without even noticing. "You were gone pretty late," I said slowly. She shrugged, not missing a beat. "Yeah, lost track of time. Ended up chatting with one of the trainers about nutrition plans." Then she rolled her eyes dramatically. "You wouldn't care about that, babe." I clenched my jaw so tight I thought my teeth might crack. She had no idea I knew. No idea I'd sat outside that dingy hotel with my heart shattering. Later that night, I couldn't hold it anymore. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the photos, and shoved it across the table to her. "Care to explain this?" For the first time, she froze. Her eyes darted to the screen, then back to me, then to the screen again. Most people, when caught, at least stumble. Not Claire. She took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and went on the offensive. "That's wow, Mark. You seriously followed me? Do you know how insane that is? That's controlling. That's abusive. You've completely lost it." I blinked at her, stunned. "Are you serious right now? You're kissing another man outside a hotel, and I'm the problem?" She snatched the phone out of my hand, scrolled through the pictures, and slammed it down. "You don't even know what you're looking at. That's a coworker. We were at a late-night work event, and I had too much wine. It was a stupid mistake, not what you think." Her words came rapid fire, like bullets. Excuses layered on excuses. She admitted just enough, a stupid mistake, to make me second-guess myself, but never the full truth. That was Claire's specialty. I felt my blood pressure spike. So you're telling me you just happened to make out with a coworker at midnight, outside a hotel, and then spend hours inside with him? Her face hardened. Believe what you want. But if you keep accusing me of things, Mark, you're going to destroy this marriage, not me. That line cut deep. She was flipping the script, painting herself as the victim, me as the aggressor. And the sick part? A small piece of me wanted to believe her, wanted to buy the lie, because the truth hurt too much. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I stared at her across the table, the distance between us feeling wider than the Grand Canyon. And for the first time in our marriage, I realized I didn't recognize the woman sitting across from me. After that morning confrontation, I thought maybe I could get through to her. Maybe a calm, reasoned conversation would bring the truth to light. I was wrong. So wrong. That night, I tried again. Claire, we need to talk. Honestly, I can't keep pretending this didn't happen. My voice was low but firm. She crossed her arms, tilted her head, and gave me that smirk I'd once found charming. Oh, Mark, you're really going to make this about me again? You're obsessed. Seriously, obsessed. That's what she called it. The woman who had just spent the better part of a year hiding a double life and making out with someone else at midnight. She had the audacity to tell me I was the obsessive one. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me. Obsessed? Obsessed is seeing your wife in pictures kissing another man outside a hotel. Obsessed is living a lie while I sit here blind. She laughed, a cold, calculated laugh. Pictures can be taken out of context, Mark. You think you have proof? This is exactly why people spy on each other. It's pathetic. I stared at her. My hands shook. I wanted to throw something, anything, but I controlled myself. I had to. I needed clarity, not chaos. She leaned forward suddenly, whispering like she was sharing a secret. You know, I've been feeling trapped. You're so controlling. Always asking questions, always judging. Maybe I needed a little freedom, a little excitement. My heart hammered. Excitement? That's how she justified it? I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her and shake her until she remembered what loyalty meant. But instead, I felt a strange calmness settle over me. That calm, cold realization that I could no longer trust her. That everything we had built was now shadowed by deception. Then, without warning, she changed tactics. She cried. Just a little at first, then more. Big, dramatic sobs, shaking shoulders, tears falling as if she were the one being wronged. I never wanted to hurt you, Mark. I love you. I'm so confused. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. The emotional roller coaster was unbearable. Anger, hurt, disbelief, empathy, flashes of every feeling stormed through me at once. She was good, really good, at twisting reality, making me feel like the villain even though I held all the evidence. I realized in that moment that I had to protect myself emotionally. If I let her manipulate me further, I would lose more than just trust. I would lose myself. So I made a decision that night. I would no longer let her control the narrative. I would get the truth, and then I would decide how to move forward. Not from a place of desperation, but from power. And oh, Claire was about to find out that I wasn't the same husband who once blindly trusted her. After that night, I knew I couldn't just wait for Claire to confess. I needed hard evidence, a way to protect myself emotionally and legally if it came to that. I started small, tracking patterns, noting times, places, every little slip of the tongue. It felt like I had become a detective in my own home, and the more I documented, the more I realized how deep this went. Every late night at work suddenly had a pattern. Every vague excuse, a timestamp. I even started comparing her stories to receipts, locations, and her social media posts. At first, it was exhausting. I'd spend hours piecing together what felt like a puzzle with missing pieces, but slowly, the picture became clearer. Then came the moments that shook me further. A hidden credit card receipt from a fancy hotel brunch at 10 a.m., while she was supposedly at a meeting. A friend's Instagram story showing her laughing with a man I didn't know. The little things she thought I'd never notice, I noticed. I kept these carefully, like evidence in a case. I didn't confront her immediately. I had to be smart. I had to wait for the moment when I could no longer be dismissed, when the truth would hit her harder than any excuses she could fabricate. But emotionally, it was killing me. I couldn't sleep without replaying every interaction, every smile she gave me that now felt fake. I kept asking myself, how did I not see this sooner? The betrayal was suffocating, and I found myself swinging between anger and disbelief, love and revulsion. She started noticing subtle changes in me, though I didn't know if she suspected what I had discovered. I was quieter, more distant. I stopped making small talk, stopped initiating touch. Every time she laughed, I reminded myself that this was the woman who had lied to me repeatedly, the woman whose kisses had been stolen by another. One night, I caught her glancing at me strangely, a flicker of guilt in her eyes. She thought she could manipulate me with her charm and tears, but I was preparing for the final confrontation. I had to be methodical. One wrong move, and she'd twist the truth again. By the end of that week, I had a folder filled with photos, screenshots, receipts, and notes. Each one, a piece of the betrayal she had been hiding. I realized then that I didn't just need the truth, I needed clarity. And soon, I'd have to decide whether I could ever rebuild anything with the woman sitting across from me. I felt a mix of empowerment and dread. Empowerment, because I had the upper hand now. Dread, because I knew the moment of confrontation would change everything. Claire's lies had gone too far, and she didn't even realize the storm she had created was about to hit. I had waited for the perfect moment, and one Friday evening, I decided it was time. Claire was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing had changed, humming a tune she'd always claimed I hated. I took a deep breath and called her over. "Claire, sit down. We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but firm. She raised an eyebrow, smirk playing at the corners of her lips. "Oh, about what?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder I had spent weeks compiling. Photos, screenshots, hotel receipts, location logs, all the proof of her betrayal. I laid it on the coffee table, spreading everything like a deck of cards. Her eyes widened slightly, but only for a fraction of a second. Then came the mask, calm, collected, infuriatingly smug. "You're insane, Mark." "Really?" she said, leaning back. "You've compiled what? A few pictures? Screenshots? That's hardly evidence. It's circumstantial at best." I swallowed hard, keeping my anger in check. "Circumstantial? This," I said, pointing to a photo of her kissing another man outside that hotel, "is exactly what I saw. This isn't circumstantial, it's real. I've traced every late night at work to places you weren't supposed to be. Every lie has a paper trail." She leaned forward suddenly, eyes narrowing. "You're acting like you know everything. Maybe you're the one projecting, Mark. Maybe you've been looking for problems where there are none. Honestly, this is ridiculous." I felt my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had to. "Claire, I know everything. And I'm giving you a chance to tell me the truth before this goes further. No more lies." She laughed then, a cold, sharp laugh that made my stomach twist. "Tell you the truth? You wouldn't like the truth, Mark. The truth is messy, complicated, and I don't need to justify my life to you." I saw the manipulation forming in her words, the same pattern I had noticed countless times. But this time, I wasn't falling for it. I stayed silent, letting her feel the weight of her own lies. She shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable with my silence, and muttered, "You know what? Forget it. If you're going to play detective, then I guess we're done here." That hit me like a punch to the gut. Not because of the threat itself, but because the woman I had loved for over a decade was already framing the narrative, making it my fault that I uncovered her deceit. I clenched my fists, feeling the storm inside me, and realized that confrontation wasn't about anger anymore. It was about survival, emotional survival, mental clarity, and reclaiming control over a life that had been hijacked by lies. And deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The real battle, the one that would define our marriage, our lives, was about to start. After that first confrontation, the dynamic between us shifted. Claire stopped pretending to be oblivious. Now she played a new game. Every word, every gesture, every glance felt like a calculated move. It was exhausting, like walking on a tightrope over a pit of fire. She would laugh at things I didn't find funny, text in front of me but quickly hide her phone, make innocent comments that were thinly veiled digs. One evening, while we were watching TV, she turned to me and said, "You're so obsessed with control, Mark. Don't you ever trust me? Or is spying your hobby?" I bit back a reply. I didn't need to argue. I already had the evidence. Let her dig herself into a corner. But the worst part was the way she made me question myself. She'd say things like, "Are you sure you're remembering correctly?" Sometimes our minds trick us, you know. That little doubt she planted, it gnawed at me, making me second-guess my own perceptions. She was brilliant at this. Then came the more blatant manipulations. She'd suddenly claim she was stressed, overwhelmed, on the verge of a breakdown. I'd feel my guard slip a little, worried about her mental state, only for her to casually dismiss it minutes later with a smirk. It was cruel, emotional torture disguised as charm. And yet, I stayed firm. I reminded myself of every receipt, every photo, every lie. I wasn't imagining anything. She had built a web of deception, and I had the map to navigate it. But it was isolating. I felt like I was living in a house with a stranger who knew exactly how to push my buttons. I couldn't trust her words, her touch, even the way she smiled. Every interaction was a test, and I wasn't sure if I could endure the constant strain. At the same time, I was gathering more proof. I checked accounts, cross-referenced locations, even talked to a few coworkers under the guise of casual curiosity. The evidence kept mounting, and with each new piece, I felt a mix of validation and heartbreak. Claire noticed my methodical calm. I think it scared her more than outright confrontation ever could. She began to hesitate in her lies, slip in small details that didn't match up, and for the first time, I saw cracks in her armor. I realized then, this was no longer just about betrayal. It was a battle of wills, a war between truth and manipulation, and only one of us could come out intact. And I was determined to survive, no matter how twisted the game became. By the 9th week after discovering Claire's affair, I realized that waiting, watching, and enduring wasn't enough. I needed a plan, a clear strategy to confront her once and for all. Every day felt like walking through a fog of tension, never knowing what she would do next, never knowing if the calm moments were genuine or just a prelude to another manipulation. I started documenting everything meticulously, not just photos and receipts, but patterns of behavior. Every lie, every strange text, every unusual outing went into a spreadsheet. I even started noting times when she glanced at her phone nervously or gave me vague explanations. It was exhausting, almost obsessive, but I needed certainty. One evening, I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by piles of evidence, and laid out a timeline. I marked every suspicious event, every interaction with unknown men, every hotel receipt, and cross-referenced it with work schedules and her claimed errands. Patterns emerged. The web she had tried to weave so carefully now looked fragile, like a house of cards ready to collapse. I rehearsed how I would confront her. I didn't want an argument that spiraled into chaos. I wanted clarity, an unambiguous moment where she couldn't deflect or lie her way out. I envisioned myself calm, collected, voice steady. I'd lay the evidence out like cards on the table, and this time, I wouldn't back down. No excuses, no tears, no gaslighting. Still, doubt lingered. Part of me feared what she might say, how she might react. Would she attack me verbally, deny everything, or try to turn it around as she had before? The thought of seeing the woman I loved, the one I had shared a decade of my life with, become a stranger who could manipulate and lie with such ease, it hurt more than any betrayal could. But there was also a quiet, hard resolve growing inside me. I had learned a lot in the past weeks: patience, observation, and most importantly, the power of truth. I knew I couldn't undo the past, but I could control the confrontation, guide it toward an outcome where I reclaimed my sense of reality and dignity. I also began thinking about the aftermath. I wasn't naive. I knew the road ahead could end in separation. I considered counseling, but deep down, I doubted she would ever accept responsibility. The thought of rebuilding trust felt almost impossible, yet I had to be prepared for every possibility. That night, I went to bed with a mixture of exhaustion, dread, and resolve. Tomorrow, I would begin the final stage of this ordeal. And this time, no matter what, I wouldn't let fear or manipulation dictate my actions. I had the truth on my side, and that was all I needed. I remember the night clearly. I waited until the house was quiet, the kids asleep, the world outside muted. Claire was in the living room, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware of the storm about to hit. My hands were steady, my mind sharp. I had rehearsed every word, every move, every calm pause. "Claire," I said, my voice calm but firm. She looked up, startled, like she hadn't expected me to speak so seriously. We need to talk. She tried to smile, an automatic, disarming smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I laid the evidence on the coffee table one by one, photos, receipts, screenshots. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I let the truth speak for itself. Her reaction was instantaneous. First, disbelief. What? How did you even get this? She asked, voice trembling. Then, defensiveness. You're imagining things, Mark. You're being paranoid. She tried to reach for the phone, to delete something, I don't know what. I stopped her with a steady hand, a silent warning. I watched her closely, noticing the tiny slips, the hesitation before denying certain texts, the micro-expressions when photos flashed across the screen. She couldn't maintain the facade. For the first time in weeks, I saw her falter. Tears came next. I didn't mean for this to happen. She began, but I cut her off gently. I don't want excuses. I want honesty. Not lies, not half-truths. Just the truth. Her voice cracked. She shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. For the first time, I realized how much power the evidence gave me. Not to punish her, but to see reality clearly, without the fog of manipulation. She tried one last tactic, her classic ploy, guilt-tripping. You've changed, Mark. You're so cold. Maybe if you were more attentive, I wouldn't have. I shook my head, refusing to be drawn into the trap. Her words, her tears, her attempts at charm, they didn't work this time. I had seen through the lies. By the end of the night, she admitted to some things, though she still twisted the narrative to make herself look less guilty. I didn't respond with anger. I stayed calm, listening, absorbing, knowing this was only the beginning. Walking away to my bedroom, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Relief, because the truth was finally out. Sorrow, because the woman I loved had caused so much pain. I realized then that clarity, even when bitter, is better than endless doubt. And I knew that tomorrow, we would have to decide what comes next. The next morning, the house felt heavier than usual. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, but it didn't warm the pit of dread in my stomach. Claire was quiet, sullen, like a storm had passed through but left its mark behind. And in that silence, I could finally let my emotions surface. For weeks, I had bottled everything. Anger, disbelief, the sting of betrayal. I had focused on collecting proof, on planning confrontation. But now, as I sat at the kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee, the full weight of the situation hit me. My hands shook slightly, and a lump formed in my throat. Anger came first. Anger at her lies, her manipulations, the audacity of it all. I replayed moments in my head. The late-night texts, the innocent smiles that masked deceit, the casual way she'd dismiss my questions. Every memory sparked fire in my chest, a fury I hadn't let myself feel until now. Then came the sadness, the sorrow of realizing the woman I had trusted completely, the one I had shared dreams and fears with, had hidden a double life. The quiet moments we had cherished now felt tainted, each memory edged with betrayal. I mourned not just the deception, but the illusion of the life I thought we had built together. And intertwined with both was confusion. How had this happened? Could I have missed signs? Was there something in me, in our relationship, that drove her to this? I knew the questions were unfair, but they gnawed at me relentlessly. Claire hovered nearby, seemingly unsure how to act. Her attempts at casual conversation felt hollow. I realized she was testing me again, waiting to see if I would break, if I would forgive, if I would crumble. I didn't. I was too far gone for that. Instead, I focused on clarity. I reviewed the evidence once more, reaffirmed the truth in my mind, and began considering the paths ahead. Separation was one option, a clean break to reclaim my life. Counseling was another, though I doubted her willingness to truly engage. And then there was the possibility of leaving temporarily, to give both of us space to breathe and reflect. I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't make a decision out of anger alone. I needed a level head, a clear mind, and the courage to act in alignment with my values. By evening, I had begun drafting a plan, not a confrontation, not a lecture, but a roadmap for how to move forward, whatever that might look like. And though my heart ached, I felt a sense of empowerment too. I had survived the initial storm. Now it was time to navigate the aftermath, and I intended to do so on my own terms. By the 12th week, the fog of confusion and raw emotion had started to clear. After countless sleepless nights and silent arguments with myself, I reached a conclusion. I could no longer ignore the reality of our marriage. Claire had chosen a path that betrayed the foundation of trust we had built, and no amount of excuses or promises could erase that. I sat her down one evening, after the kids were asleep, and spoke with a calmness that surprised even me. "Claire," I began, "I've spent weeks processing everything. I've considered forgiveness, counseling, and compromise. But I've realized that continuing this marriage as it is would destroy me." Her face contorted in a mix of shock and defensiveness. "You're overreacting, Mark. Can't we just talk? Work things out," she pleaded, her voice trembling. I shook my head, refusing to let myself be drawn into another round of manipulations. "I've documented everything," I said, gesturing toward the folder on the table. "Every lie, every deception. This isn't about anger anymore. It's about reality. And reality tells me that we cannot continue as if nothing happened." I could see the shift in her expression, denial giving way to a thin veil of fear. She tried her usual tactic of guilt tripping. "After everything we've shared, you'd throw it all away?" But I held my ground. I wasn't giving in to manipulation this time. I had learned that self-preservation mattered more than appeasing someone who had broken my trust repeatedly. The next few days were a flurry of practical decisions. I contacted a lawyer to understand my options, arranged temporary living arrangements to give both of us space, and began the painful process of explaining the situation to our children in an age-appropriate way. Every step was emotionally exhausting, but necessary. I also began setting boundaries. Claire could no longer control the narrative or manipulate emotions. I made it clear that while we would co-parent respectfully, my focus was on rebuilding my life, my sense of self, and reclaiming my emotional stability. Despite the heartbreak, there was an unexpected sense of empowerment. For the first time in months, I felt like I had agency. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was making decisions on my terms. The path ahead was difficult, but I had clarity, and that clarity became my anchor amidst the storm of betrayal and pain. By the end of the week, the plan was in motion. The confrontation was complete, boundaries were set, and I knew the journey forward would be challenging, but at least it was my journey, guided by truth rather than deception. The first few days after making the decision to separate were surreal. The house felt both emptier and heavier at the same time. Claire's presence was no longer a constant tension, but the quiet left a hollow space where laughter, arguments, and even the mundane routines had once existed. I walked through rooms, half expecting her to appear with a sarcastic remark or a manipulative grin, only to remember she wasn't there anymore. At first, there was a strange sense of relief. I could breathe without tiptoeing around lies, without the gnawing anxiety of wondering what she was hiding. Every decision I made, every small action, was mine alone. I cooked meals without negotiating her preferences. I went for evening walks without questioning every step. That freedom was intoxicating, a reminder that life could exist outside the cage of deceit. Yet, with freedom came an unfamiliar emptiness. I missed the routines, the sound of her voice, even when it carried frustration. I missed the life I had imagined we would continue to build together, the small dreams that now felt like shattered glass beneath my feet. Every room, every object, reminded me of memories tainted by betrayal but still emotionally potent. Some nights, I found myself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying moments I could never unsee. The laughter we had shared, the whispered promises, the shared glances at dinners and holidays. It all became bittersweet echoes. I mourned not only the marriage I had thought I had, but also the woman I had loved, who had become someone unrecognizable. I began journaling, pouring every thought, every surge of anger, every pang of sadness onto paper. Writing became a form of therapy, a way to untangle the knots of emotion threatening to overwhelm me. I realized that the process of healing wasn't linear. It was jagged, messy, and profoundly personal. And amid all the grief, there was a spark of resilience. I remembered my own value, my own identity outside of the marriage. I started reconnecting with friends I had drifted from, focusing on work and hobbies that had been neglected, and allowing myself moments of joy without guilt. The days blurred together, a mixture of sorrow, freedom, and cautious optimism. I knew the road ahead would be long, filled with difficult conversations and legal hurdles. But for the first time in months, I felt like the architect of my own life again, not a prisoner to lies or deceit. By the 14th week, the fog of betrayal had begun to lift, replaced by a clearer sense of who I was and what I wanted from life. The emotional roller coaster, the anger, the grief, the confusion, had gradually given way to something steadier, resolve. I realized that healing wasn't about forgetting Claire or pretending nothing happened. It was about reclaiming my own identity, my own sense of worth, and my right to happiness. I started small. I arranged my home the way I wanted it, cleared spaces that had become cluttered with memories of her deceit, and reintroduced routines that made me feel grounded. Mornings became a time for reflection and planning, rather than bracing for conflict or anxiety. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, people who reminded me of life beyond the chaos of betrayal. Conversations with Claire had become structured and necessary, limited to co-parenting and practical matters. I discovered that boundaries were not just a defensive mechanism, they were a declaration of my own autonomy. Each time I refused to be manipulated, each time I asserted my needs, I felt a spark of empowerment that had been buried under months of pain. One evening, I took a long walk through the park, reflecting on how far I had come. I realized that the marriage I had imagined was gone, yes, but what I had gained in return was invaluable. Clarity, self-respect, and the knowledge that I could survive even the deepest betrayal. I didn't feel the same bitterness I had once harbored. It had been replaced by a calm determination to protect my emotional well-being and nurture the life I still had ahead of me. I knew the final steps of this journey were approaching, formalizing the separation, arranging living conditions, and facing the emotional impact of co-parenting. But I felt ready. For the first time since the discovery, I was not reacting. I was acting intentionally, with foresight and courage. As I prepared the final documents and made calls to lawyers and family, I felt a strange sense of closure. Not because Claire had changed, or because the marriage could be salvaged, but because I had changed. I had confronted the betrayal, endured the storm, and emerged with my dignity intact. The next day, I would sit across from her one last time in a structured, calm conversation. No yelling, no manipulation, no theatrics, just facts, boundaries, and mutual acknowledgement that our paths were diverging. And for the first time in months, I looked forward to that conversation not with fear, but with a quiet confidence that I could face whatever came next. The final conversation with Claire was calm, almost surreal in its quietness. No shouting, no dramatics, just the reality of two lives parting ways. I outlined the logistics of our separation, discussed co-parenting schedules, and reaffirmed the boundaries we had set. She tried to manipulate the conversation a few times, but I stayed firm, repeating calmly that the decisions were for the sake of stability, honesty, and our children's well-being. After she left, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. The marriage that had caused so much pain was officially behind me, and while the road ahead would be challenging, I knew I had regained control of my life. I reflected on what I had learned. Trust is sacred, and betrayal is a boundary. Once broken, it cannot simply be patched over with apologies. Self-respect comes first. You cannot nurture others if you let lies and manipulation erode your sense of self. Healing is a process, not a moment. It's jagged, messy, and personal. Allow yourself the time to feel everything without shame. Boundaries are empowering. Saying no to toxic behavior is not cruel. It's necessary for survival. I also realized the importance of community. Friends, family, and even professional support can make the journey bearable. I had rediscovered hobbies and passions that had been shelved for years. The small joys, laughter with friends, quiet walks, and moments of reflection became my anchors. Looking back, the betrayal was a harsh teacher, but one that forced me to reclaim my identity. I can now move forward with clarity, gratitude for lessons learned, and the courage to protect my emotional well-being in the future. If you're going through something similar, know that you are not alone. Focus on yourself, set boundaries, and don't be afraid to walk away from what destroys your spirit. It's hard, but the freedom and self-respect that follow are worth every painful step. And finally, I want to remind everyone watching, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who might need it. Your support helps us tell more real, raw stories that inspire and heal. This chapter is over, but the journey continues. And for the first time in a long time, I feel ready for it.